years ago. It's one of the most powerful dynasties.
At least it does nothing for me. It does nothing for me. I mean, I actually think I'm getting gypped when I go to a movie and I realize it's either been shot on digital or being projected in digital. I mean, some people feel differently about this, but I think it's the death keel. I think it's the death rattle, and you know, it's yeah, I do. And I also have even another whole aspect about it. You know, I've always believed in the magic of movies.
Yeah.
And to me, the magic of movies is connected to 35 millimeter, because everyone thinks, you can't help but think, that when you're filming something on film, that you're recording movement. You're not recording movement. You are just taking a series of still pictures. There's no movement in movies at all. They are still pictures. But when shown at 24 frames a second, through a light bulb, it creates the illusion of movement. So thus, as opposed to a recording device, when you're watching a movie, a film print, you are watching an illusion. And to me, that illusion is connected to the magic of movies.
I keep thinking of painting. Is it the end of oil painting? Is it the end of... I really don't think that. I think celluloid is still going to be a choice. I don't think the fact that you have, you know,
Painting
Polaroid has
doesn't
gone
take
out.
12 people. Painting doesn't take, you know, painting doesn't have the same...
True, financially.
You know, exactly. You know what I mean? Painting is like I can.
Well, that's the problem with the digital in the sense. I mean, another aspect, I should say, not a problem, but another aspect one has to think that this idea of the image that is digitized and you think will always be there and it's cheaper and it's faster. Anything cheaper and faster, it makes sense for the businessman to finance. You know, but the danger, especially I think in our culture, is that a cheaper, faster is consumed, bang, goes away. There's nothing. There's no nourishment.
It has to be forced obsolescence.
Yeah. And so that's the danger. Yes, to be cheaper and faster so that it can enable us to enrich a culture rather than just consume it.
Epic. And now the newest part of this conversation seems to be, and you guys have a little bit of Hobbit footage in the movie, but the 48 frames per second conversation.
At 4K.
Which we really couldn't do in film at all, but now that we're in an all-digital medium or moving towards it, now that's the next frontier for them, is that, and the reactions have been so divided from the early screenings of 48 frame footage. Well, they showed at CinemaCon.
How did that go?
A chunk of The Hobbit, and some of the people in the room really loved it, and some of the people couldn't even talk about the film itself because they couldn't get past the look, which to them was straight video. Like it was too hyper-real, too clean, and it lost some of that magic of film for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the development of the eye, right? You know, what are you used to seeing? If this is so new and different, right, then it has to go to your taste, right? And if it looks like video, then it looks like video. But then other people would say, well, that's a new look. That's something else. That's something else. Let's do it on those terms.
Well, to some degree, I would think that the cost of film is going to continue to increase as it gets harder to process and work with. So it's almost a fetish thing at that point. It becomes, if you're Spielberg and you want to shoot film, you can because you're Spielberg. But if you're starting out,
yeah, but didn't Wes Anderson just release a film on Super 16?
Which was, and beautiful. Like but again, I think Wes has a very strong sense of style.
You're definitely going to get pressure from the producers to shoot photochemically. There's no doubt. And the resources are definitely going to become more specialized and boutique-y and driving up the cost of that. And to service a photochemical film in terms of prints, developing, getting the film, it's going to become harder and harder, be more and more scarce.
I thought it was also interesting that you guys talk about the way it affects performance. And I thought what Greta Gerwig had to say about how aware she was of that film rolling through and knowing that you've got 10 minutes and then it's gone. For 47 Ronin, was it film or was it digital?
It was digital. It was a 3D show.
For you, does it change the process at all in front of the camera? Do you find it different when they don't have to cut the same way, when they don't have to reload? Does it change your work at all?
It's hard to know because it's kind of You don't know because you can't judge outcomes, right? You can't say, you can't do a comparative. Well, I did this performance photochemically and I did this one digitally. You know, there's nothing there to compare. Experientially, it's definitely a different set. Richard Linklater talks about, well, that's just environment. You can create that. You know, whether you wanted the pressure of, or the focus of a photochemical set environment. To me, you have less of a physical boundary, you know, because you do have the possibility of a longer take. So whatever that can do, you know.
And I've heard
you know, it doesn't interrupt kind of the workflow in the same way.
This argument that because I want to use CGI I should be shooting on digital is not a valid argument. Because at the end of the day, film will be telecine anyway and digitally edited these days. So the advantages to digital is not necessarily to do with having to do a cut and splice edit, because that doesn't really exist now. Yeah. So in that sense, the only consideration that you have with regard to using film is to do with the look, the quality, the resolutions that you can get, and probably looking at things like the type of film that you're using. I think you're always going to have directors who are going to specialise using film.
Yeah.
I think that's always going to exist. However, I do think it's going to become less and less common. And it's to do with the directors that are able to use film. Media courses these days is that nobody's teaching film. And I think that's an issue, because I think those skills are going to die out, because at the moment you guys are entirely learning about a digital process where you learn about camera angles and shooting and non-linear editing. But there's a whole other area that's there available to you creatively that is potentially being ignored. And again, what difference does it make if you choose a different film stock? If you choose a film stock with a higher ISO, if you choose a particular type of film, then you get a completely different look in your movie from the off. So how well is that replicated in programs like Premiere? Absolutely. I think the whole internet revolution has had a major effect and will continue to do so. I think that now that we've got broadband speeds that allow the uploading and viewing of video, which is a brand new thing, I don't think that you guys necessarily realise how new that is. There was a time when to download a movie could take you 6 weeks. You know, it was impossible. You could not do what you can do now. But what it's done is it's given people a platform to put their work up. And that's not the only one. There's all sorts of film databases and film websites as well. But certainly YouTube has allowed the individual to become a filmmaker. And digital cameras and that digital revolution and the cheapness of basic editing software has also allowed people to then do the edit process. They don't have to worry about buying film stock. They don't have to worry about developing costs. The cost of making a movie is nowadays time, if you've got a bit of gear.
I remember Oliver Stone was standing up for the DP. He goes, wait a minute, what about the art of cinematography? You know, well, you still have to like these things. It's not like they just like themselves. You still have to. There's still an art to making this look good. But you can just see what you're doing. You couldn't see what you were doing before. And he said, what about the art of guessing? Well, you just turn your monitor off. It'll be just like the old days. You got a big laugh from that.
I think they're using digital because it is less expensive and because
it's easier.
It's easier.
To edit.
They plug it in, hit play, and it goes.
Yeah.
You don't require projectionists anymore. You don't require specialist staff who are working projectors. But is that a loss? Opinion. I do think that you're going to get into a situation down the line where you will have specialist small theatres.
Yeah.
who will have projectionists and projectors, and they will show films on film. But I think it's becoming less and less common now. And in most of the major cinemas, they may have one projector left, but that's about it. The rest of it is a digital format. I shoot on digital.